Hello and welcome. Please come in and grab a seat. There's more seats up the front. This is a very Baptist and Anglican thing that's happening here, but we can break that. We can come up the front. It's okay. Welcome to the launch of Islam and Women, Hagar's Heritage by Maura Dale. It is a real joy to have you all here. If I haven't had the privilege of meeting you, yes, let's cheer. Let's We just need some ululating, Kathy, I think. We can work our way up to that, it's okay, at the end of the event. If I haven't had the privilege of meeting you, my name is Miriam Dale. Now, I first met Moira she's my mother if we haven't figured that part out yet. It's a real joy to be here with all of you. I have the privilege of emceeing for you this morning, and I'll just give you a bit of a run-through of what this event is going to be like. So we're going to start with some poetry, some endorsements, and reflections on the book. And then the book will be officially launched by Bernie and Catherine Power. And then we'll hear a Thanksgiving by Moira. And then we'll all head out to buy as many books and art pieces as possible, and then enjoy some delicious refreshments on the lawn. Yes, and we'll hear from the illustrator as well, yeah. Here you can see her beautiful work around here. A few things to be aware of. The bathrooms, if you are in need, are basically through that wall, but it's best if you go around the wall. Right to the left of the sale room where all of the books and art pieces are being sold, there's a corridor, and there's an ambulant and a wheelchair bathroom in there as well. Now, for masks, unless you are up here and speaking into the mic, can I ask that you keep your mask on and over your nose and mouth? If you want to take it off, you can do so outside. We're just going to be really careful with each other's health and well-being today. Thank you for being part of that and for taking care of each other. And just a heads up that Moira has, as she might have let you know, limited energy today. So she won't, unfortunately, be able to say hi to everyone as much as I'm sure everyone would love to catch up with her, and she would love to catch up with everyone, but that just won't be possible. So you can write her an email to that same email address that you registered with, or you can pass along a message, but we're just going to really enjoy the books and the refreshments after the space rather than swarming or bombarding Mum. And if you have any books to pick up, if you have pre-purchased, which is great, you can also do that in the sales room just to the left. Now, it's good to be aware, as you may see, there's a camera here and there's a photographer here. So say hello to John and Tim. Thank you, John and Tim. So if you would like to not be on camera for whatever reason, that's fine. Just make yourself known to them and they can sort of make sure that they're not zooming in on your face or, taking portrait shots and posting them online, that sort of thing. Yeah. They're very sensitive people, so absolutely feel free to ask them. But the filming in particular will just be up the front, so it's unlikely that you'll be caught in that crossfire. I think that's all of our announcements today, but I'd like to start with an acknowledgement of country. We meet today to give glory to God, who is Creator, Word and Spirit, God who from one ancestor made all nations to inhabit the whole earth. And we begin by acknowledging that we are gathering here on the traditional country of the Bunwurrung and Wurundjeri tribes of the Kulin Nation. It is upon their ancestral lands that St Andrew's Hall is built. So we pay our respects to elders past and present, recognising their cultural heritage, beliefs and relationship with the land. We commit ourselves to pray and work for the flourishing of their descendants today under the Lord Jesus Christ. All right, now I have the privilege of sharing some poetry with you today. I'll share some of mine in a moment, but I wanted to kick off with a couple of selections from a woman called Mahsa Khaf, who is a Syrian American poet, and she does these beautiful pieces, including one appropriately called Hagar Poems. So I would recommend having a read of her work online or ordering her book. But this first piece is called Hagar, No Roses, and it goes like this. I only understood Hagar when my baby got a fever. It was late, and we were just off Medicaid and above the poverty line, but not enough for insurance plans or private doctors. It was my first baby, and I didn't know when not to worry. I didn't know. I knew high fevers could damage brains if left too long. I knew the little body felt wrong, shook slightly, eyes rolled back, not responding to acetaminophen. The on-call at the ER was busy, didn't phone back for what seemed like hours, while I paced like Ethiopian Hagar in her desert, watching Ismail's small sunken chest gasp up and down in throes of thirst. Hagar did not slump over the body, waiting for what grace might come. She shook her fist at the angel. Help us! It was not a plea, but a demand. I went through lists of people I knew who would know what to do for babies, who willing to wait to worry with me, ringing the bouquets of useless roses that laid at the foot of motherhood. I hated knowing I would humble myself to phone them in the middle of the night, to stand with arms down by my side, however long, whatever their conditions, if they would tell me what the baby needed now. Hagar, no roses here. Motherhood is bitter fighting against death forces in a desert of indifference. Provide water, provide balm. If there is any salve in the world, it is for this. Here, now, the infant, small flames that rise in irises to flicker like tigers. And that's the first piece. The second piece I'll read from her, I think she wrote a little earlier. It's in another of her books called Emails from Shahrazad. And it's called The Marvelous Women. There are a great many marvelous women here too, and marvelous men. All women speak two languages, the language of men and the language of silent suffering. Some women speak a third, the language of queens. They are marvelous, and they are my friends. My friends give me poetry. If it were not for them, I'd be a seamstress out of work. They send me their dresses, and I sew together poems, enormous sails for ocean journeys. My marvelous friends, these women who are elegant and fixed engines, who teach gynecology and literacy, and work in jails and sing and sculpt and paint the 99 names, who keep each other's secrets and pass on each other's spirits, like small packets of leavening. It is from you I fashion poetry. I scoop up in handfuls glittering sequins that fall from your bodies as you fall in love, marry, divorce, get custody, get cats, enter supreme courts of justice, argue with God. You rescuers on galloping steeds of the weak and the wounded, creatures of beauty and passion, powerful workers in love. You are the poems. I am only your stenographer. I am the hungry transcriber of the conjuring recipes you hoard in the chests of your great-grandmothers. My marvelous friends, the women of brilliance in my life who levitate my daughters, you are a coat of many colours in silk tie-dye, so gossamer it can be crumpled in one hand. You houris, you mermaids, swimmers in dangerous waters, defiers of sharks. My marvelous friends, thirsty Hagars and laughing Sarahs, you eloquent radio Aishas, Marys drinking the secret milkshakes of heaven, slinky Zuleikas of desire, gay Waladas, Harriets parting the sea, Esthers in the palace, Penelopes of patient steaming. You are the last hope of the shrinking women. You are the last hand to the fallen knights. You are the only epics left in the world. Come with me. Come with poetry. Jump on this wild chariot. Hurry. Help me with these wayward snorting horses. Together we will pull across the sky the sun that will make the earth radiant or burn in its terrible brilliance. And that is a good way to die. The end. Thank you. And I would like to invite up... I would now like to invite up Kathy, who will share her endorsement of the book. I'll let Kathy introduce herself. I think. Do you want me to introduce you?
Actually, introductions aren't necessary.
If you haven't met Kathy, can I recommend you do? It's a real joy. And, well, I know this from my mother and from Kathy and from many other women in my life. She may be petite, but she packs a punch. And she brings with her a great zest of life and wisdom and passion and expertise and joy, and I'm very thankful for you. And she's been a big partner on this journey with Mum throughout the decades. So please welcome Kathy.
Thank you, Miriam. I'm probably the only person in this room who was delighted when the book launch got delayed because it gave me the opportunity to actually come down. Otherwise, I would have still been in quarantine in Brisbane, having been locked out of the country for 2 years. So I'm thrilled to be here today and to share this with you, Moira. Moira and I have only one thing we disagree about. That's when we first met. She says Egypt, I say Sydney. I think her memory might be better than mine. I'm delighted to be here because one of the things that Moira's taught me is there's always something to celebrate, and you always need to raise a glass to it, and it can be any time from breakfast until you go to bed. So we raise a glass in celebration of this amazing day. I was packing my bookshelves of my books on Islam just last week, and I noted as I packed that there were few of those books that were written by women. So who is helping the church and mission to address women's experience of faith within Islam? Who is helping those of us who work among Muslims be able to understand the experience of the whole community? Moira's book is one of the few, but I hope what will become a growing number, that help us hear women's life and faith experience and how the gospel message engages with that. One of the things I've heard people say most as they've read this book over these last couple of months is they wish they had had it when they first went to live in a Muslim majority nation. This book is an essential resource for training those who are preparing to live and work in whatever community is with Muslim peoples. And the reason it's so important is that because it provides a framework for each of us to explore that individual context. This is not a how-to book, nor is it a set of hard and fast rules about engagement. This is a book that invites us into a journey of relationship. And it gives us the scaffolding to explore our own experiences and the questions of life that we share with our Muslim friends. One of the riches of the book is that it breaks down the barriers between scholar and practitioner. And for me, Moira is the quintessential practitioner scholar. And she has this unique ability, which we find in this book, to give space to both in an accessible and a passionate way that opens fresh spaces for journeying together in ministry and life. But I also want to say that this isn't a book for women alone, nor is it a book that's just about women. What Moira opens the door to in this book is bringing women living under Islam back into their place as part of the whole of their societies and communities. And that's important for you and I as we journey in relationship with them. She demonstrates for us that women are not a side issue. And it's high time we got past having just a session on the side of some conference or event that's about women. That when we do a training at an institution, that women are a subject that's different. This book provides a comprehensive way for us to see the whole picture. And so what Moira shows us is that if we want to see healthy and thriving churches of followers of Jesus from within Muslim communities, we have to understand the whole story, which includes women's experience of faith and the way the gospel and discipleship influence and should be shaped by that encounter. So I congratulate you, Moira, on taking us so helpfully on that journey. And you encourage us, and I want to encourage us not just to use the book as a reading about women in Islam, but to allow it to help us begin to fill in some of those gaps we've had in understanding the gospel and its encounter with Islam. There's some great questions throughout the book, and I want to encourage you to create a reading group and use those questions and those opportunities to explore your encounters with those of other faiths. Moira, congratulations on an excellent book. It's been a privilege to journey with you over these years as part of that. Your book gives an excellent expression to your own journey, because there's a very personal story that's woven throughout that book. But you also invite us to join you in loving our neighbours as we love ourselves. So I raise a glass, as we've done many times.
Thank you, Kathy. And one of the projects that Kathy and Moira have been working on is the When Women Speak platform, and I can recommend finding out more about that in the sales room afterwards as well. We'd like to hear from a few others about what they thought about the book, so I thought I might share some of the endorsements and reflections, but I'm going to move over here. Here we go. Margaret Powell, practitioner trainer, Sydney Anglican Diocese, says, I enthusiastically welcome the consolidation of Moira's many years of observation, experience, and research in Muslim countries and in the West. This book exposes the secret world of Muslim women that the majority of missiological texts are silent on and therefore fail to equip women effectively. As Moira examines the cultures and religion of Muslim women, she shows how this impacts their beliefs and practices, which in turn enables us to understand and connect effectively with our Muslim friends. This is a central reading for all women seeking to connect with Muslim women, and is a helpful text for men as well, that they might understand the Muslim world more accurately.
And I'll be reading Professor Peter G. Riddle of SOAS University of London. In her latest book, Dr. Moira Dale opens diverse windows into the world of Muslim women, who are talked about rather than listened to. This important study reminds us that 50% of the world's Muslims are marginalized in various ways, both socially, within their own cultures, and in terms of the limited attention received in study programs focusing on Islam. The author achieves a remarkable balance between scholarly rigor and practical relevance. Through the pages of this book, Muslim women gain a voice which is long overdue.
Dr. Miriam Adeney says, who is an associate professor at Seattle Pacific University, while the everyday life of Muslim women flows through many books, rarely do we hear how these women interpret the Quran. This book captures that elusive reality. Moira Dale immerses herself in Arab women's worship groups to explore the vibrant diversity of their prayer and scripture interpretation. Another treasure trove in this volume is the rich data on women throughout Muslim history. Surprising facts and detailed stories spill from many pages. Finally, feminism appears with a dizzying variety of social media, ecofeminism, international collaboration, even the justification of prostitution as a choice, evolving in 4 waves from 1840 to 2021. Central to all of it is Jesus, the core of the cosmos and the souls of Muslim women.
Reverend Dr. Richard Shumack, Director of the Arthur Jeffrey Centre for the Study of Islam at Melbourne School of Theology. I simply love this profoundly important book. It gives unique voice to Muslim women and shines rare light into their rich, passionate, complex, and often fraught lives. Oozing transparent love of neighbour, Dale skillfully weaves sensitive storytelling with expert research and penetrating questioning to produce an outstanding resource for anyone wishing to engage with Muslim women on questions of faith, especially their Messiah.
Dr. Karen Shaw, an honorary researcher with the Angelina Noble Centre and author of Wealth and Piety, Middle Eastern Perspectives for Expat Workers, says of this book, invaluable. Accessible, scholarly, respectful, and wise, Islam and Women immerses the reader in the richly textured world of Muslim women. I wish I could have read this decades ago. It's a must-read for Christians with Muslim friends. Moira Dale knows Muslim women. Let her introduce you.
Reverend Dr. David Williams, Director of Training and Development at CMS Australia. Moira Dale has invested her whole life into serving the Lord Jesus Christ amongst Muslim women. This book is the distillation of those experiences. She has lived in 3 different Middle Eastern countries, raised her family alongside Muslim women, their families and communities, completed 2 doctorate degrees that have included extensive ethnographic research among Muslim women, observed and learned from a women's education and empowering program in the Middle Eastern Mosque. She has taught Islamic studies in seminaries and universities in Australia and the United States, articulating the forgotten and unheard perspective of women in Islam. This book is rich in both understanding and experience, presenting a deeply sympathetic portrait of women in the Islamic world. It shatters many stereotypes and brings a vital but neglected perspective to mission studies.
And Dr. Carol Walker, formerly the tutor for Islamic Studies at All Nations Christian College in the UK, says, "There is nothing quite like Islam and Women, Hagar's heritage, to be found amongst resources for those wanting to relate well to Muslim women. Moira Dale writes as a discerning, empathetic intermediary, coaxing Christian readers into recognizing their own starting points, even as she provides tools for gaining deeper insights into the lives of Muslim women. Through a blend of careful scholarship and familiarity with the everyday concerns, a comprehensive range of topics are made accessible by this timely, much-needed resource."
Dr. Stephen Bauer, Associate International Director, Operation Mobilization. The Muslim world is a largely gendered society. Our contextual mission thinking and approaches are typically geared towards just one half of that society. Most Christians serving in the Muslim world are women. Most of their leaders and trainers are men. If you, like me, are one of those men and you are serious about the Great Commission, then you need to read this book. Moira draws us into a world that so many of us have been so ignorant of for so long. I have lived in the Muslim world for over 20 years, yet I found new insights on every page of Moira's book, and I am still meditating on. Moira writes with a depth of understanding born from a sharp mind, a genuine sensitivity, and a deep, genuine friendships with Muslim women. This is not just a book for women, though. It is for all of us serving in the Muslim world, and in some ways, especially for us men. Thank you.
Thanks, John. So if you haven't realised, John is also a talented performer and poet as well, as you can tell as he projects. Those are some of the endorsements. If you want to read the rest, there it is. I would like to now invite up Bernie and Catherine Power. Now, Bernie and Catherine are known to many of us in a range of circles. They have spent, I want to say, several decades in the Middle East, working in South Asia and the Middle East, and in a range of different countries in those places. Bernie is now involved with outreach and lecturing at MST, and recently published another book on storytelling in Muslim contexts, while Catherine is known to many of us through her counselling and medical care. Also, if you haven't had a chance to meet these two, I would highly recommend doing that as well afterwards. But please welcome up the powers to launch the book.
Catherine asked me to go first. Great to be here with you today, and what a privilege to be part of the launch of this remarkable book. Moira and I go back a long way. We were students together at BCV 42 years ago. So, yeah. And even then I remember being impressed by her very sharp intellect and kind of deep spirituality. And that has grown over the years we've interacted, and her 20 plus years working in different countries in the Middle East, I've seen that develop and grow. But when I was asked to read the book, I put on my academic glasses. I teach courses at the Melbourne School of Theology on Islam, and when we teach a course, we're required to give a bibliography. That's a list of books that we would recommend that our students read. And I've got certain standards that I apply when I put a book up into my bibliography. I've got 5 of them. The first one is that person needs to know what they're talking about. Unfortunately, after 9/11, a whole lot of famous authors were asked to write books on Islam, and they had not the faintest idea what they were talking about. There was just so much rubbish that went out there, and people bought it thinking that's what Islam was about. Moira's book, it's not like that. She is someone who knows Islam and who knows Muslim women, and she seeks them out. A couple of years ago, the famous feminist author Amina Wadud, an American lady, came to Australia, and she had a very busy schedule. She spoke at a whole lot of different places, very high-profile speaker, and Moira wanted to have some time with her. So she approached her after one of the talks and said, "Can we have some time?" And Amina said, "Look, I am booked out up until the time I get on a taxi to go out to the airport to fly out." And Moira said, "So can I drive you to the airport?" And she did. And she was one of the few people who actually got personal time with Amina Wadud. And I think that just shows something of Moira's combination of determination, flexibility, also grace and service that's enabled her. She ended up paying also for her hotel bills because they didn't have any money for the organisation that brought her out to do that. So, So that was just this lovely sense of her being supportive of a fellow woman scholar. The second requirement for my book is academic rigour. The book needs to be well researched and well read. And this book shows clear evidence of both of those. The bibliographies, just amazing. And when as I read through the book, I could just see Moira's very serious research coming out. The story is told of Pablo Picasso. One day he was sitting in a restaurant having a meal, and he was doodling on the serviette. And as he got up to leave, a lady came over to him and said, "Excuse me, sir, Mr. Picasso, can I have that serviette?" And he said, "Certainly you can. That will cost you $10,000. And she said, "But it only took you 30 seconds to draw that." And he said, "Madam, it took me 40 years to draw that." And this book is the product of decades of Moira's research in Islam. The third one is that a requirement is that a book be balanced. It's very easy to put a text that shows one side of an issue, and books on Islam are very famous for that. You get both ends of the spectrum. People who just present Islam and all Muslims as though they're still living in heaven, have never come out of it, and others who go in completely the opposite direction and are just so negative about every Muslim and about all of Islam. And Moira is able to maintain that nuanced balance between both of those extremes, revealing both the good and the bad sides of Islam. And I don't think any reasonable Muslim woman would have a problem with how Islam is presented in this book. I think it's a very fair book. The fourth requirement is the book be readable. Some texts by famous scholars are so obtuse that even an educated, informed reader reads it through and you've got no idea what they're talking about. I'll often read that and think, I don't know, I'm not going to give this one to my students. If I don't understand it, I'm pretty sure they'll struggle to do that. But this book just deals with very complex issues, but does them in a very presentable, accessible way. And a couple of other people have used that word. It's very understandable, which is great. Physically, it's a beautiful looking book. It's very easy to look at. It's well set out. The print is great. The illustrations are fantastic. Thank you. It's a very good publication. So it's a book that's there. The fifth one is that the book must be faithful to the gospel. And this is very full of rich biblical insights. There's a deep understanding of how the good news of Jesus applies to Muslim women. Those are my five, but Moira's actually has an extra quality that I don't necessarily require when I put my bibliographies together, and that is love. And for this, the love of Christ shines through just in terms of Moira's commitment to him, but also her love for Muslim women. And that's really what the good news is all about. It's about how we show that love of Christ. Okay, I'll just finish with what I originally wrote when I put this book together. I said it's Muslim women are the most neglected demographic in Christian mission, and there's this glaring gap in missiological thinking and practice, and it's been crying out for a book like this. And I know I've struggled when we've put courses together and we'll have talking about Muslim women. There's not many books out there that do that, but this one combines the incisive insights of a serious scholar with the compassionate perspective of a woman practitioner who's put together a very well-researched and balanced contribution. And I think this should become the standard textbook in the field when we're talking about Muslim women. So I encourage you to buy this book. It's a beauty.
I'm quite different from my husband. And being invited to take part in launching this book, I actually felt quite out of my league. Our author goes by two names. So we have Moira, and as Bernie's pointed out, Moira is an author, a scholar, an academic, critical thinker, sharp-minded ethnographer. Not at all who I am, and intimidating to say the least. But we also have Moira known by Isabel. And when I think of Isabel, I think a woman, a daughter, a mother, a wife, a sister, a friend, a neighbour, a fellow follower of Jesus, one who is gracious and affirming, one who sees the potential in other people and helps that potential come to fruition, myself included. Thank you. And just as this book reflects Moira, it's an expression of Isabel. And this is someone that I can relate to and a book I can relate to. I'm not an academic, and despite living in the Muslim world for 20 years, I have to confess I don't get excited about Islam, Muhammad, the Quran. But what does excite me is relating to people. Actually relating to women and trying to understand, okay, what makes this person tick? What shaped them? How do they see themselves? And I have a real desire for women, and particularly Muslim women, to come to see themselves as people who have worth and value and are deeply loved by God. And this book caters for me, who I am, and how I do ministry. Moira's underlying premise is that most writing about Muslims has been written by men, and it's men who've got a male experience of Islam. They've talked to men who are Muslims, and if they've lived in the Muslim world, they've had a male experience of what it is to be a Muslim. And the assumption has been that therefore this tells us how we relate to Muslim women and how Muslim women experience their faith. Whereas Muslim women are actually informed and shaped by different things from men, and they have a different experience of living as Muslims. And if we want to connect with them, we need to actually understand who they are and not assume they fit this representation that we've been given. And as Kathy has kind of commented, as I read through this book, I had lots of moments of thinking, if only I'd kind of had that approach, maybe, might have had a more fruitful time. Moira's kind of suggestion, it's not a how-to book, but she does give us a kind of way of approaching relating to women. And in many ways, it's very simple, but actually quite difficult. But the concept is very obvious. If we want to connect meaningfully, we actually need to observe this woman who's in front of us and observe her community. And have an open mind. Notice what's going on. Ask questions and listen to the answers. And take notice of our own response and how that's shaping how we're relating to them. And then as we reflect on all of that, we reflect on the scriptures and see, okay, how do our scriptures and our understanding of God intersect with what I'm seeing with this person? And then we respond. And I'm aware of experiences, many experiences over the years, but some experiences very recently where if I'd had that approach, I think maybe the interactions with the people I was relating to might have been different. Christmas Eve, we invited 4 friends to spend the evening with us, all from different countries, 3 from Muslim countries, 1 who was here seeking religious asylum. She'd become a Christian and was escaping persecution. 1 who came as a woman seeking freedom and women's rights. And 1 who came seeking a better life, economically and professionally. We went to a local church carol service, and I have to confess I squirmed my way through the service, had these 4 women sitting next to me, and in my mind I was thinking, this is so dull, it's boring. It was a series of readings and traditional carols, a lot of the words of which are very obscure. And I just kind of thought, what on earth did we bring them to this for? Anyway, a result of Moira's book, at a later date, I asked 2 of them who'd been to a previous church with us, what did you think of this service compared with that one? And one of them said, so the previous church was a small Baptist church, and one of them said, that church, chaotic. And I'm thinking, for me it was creative, engaging, contemporary, interactive, and for her, no, chaotic. And I said, what about this one? And she thought about it and she said, yeah, a bit more formal, organised, structured. And those people there, they kind of had a role and they knew what they were doing. So, that's interesting. Anyway, the friend who's come to Australia seeking economic and professional opportunities, as we walked into the building, she kind of said to me, this is nice. So new building, modern, clean, lovely. Whereas our previous church it's a little, old heritage-listed church, no money to do renovations and falling apart. And it was really interesting that for her, if she was going to take any notice of what was happening in the building, she needed to have a sense that actually this is the kind of place that, a religious thing should take place in. So interesting for me, because if I hadn't kind of had this willingness to question and to listen, I think I would have thought, not going to bring people to this kind of church again. We brought them back and we shared a meal together, and then after the meal, Bernie shared the Christmas story and used just our crib figures, just simply told the story. And it evoked some questions. And really interesting, there was questions about, so why did the angels come and talk to the shepherds? And then our friend who's into professional development kind of said, well, why didn't he talk to the religious leaders? And it was interesting, again, I realised we hopped straight in with our assumptions about, why they talked to the shepherds and why they weren't religious leaders. And I thought, if only we'd ask them some questions. What do you think about that? And what did that say to you? We might have had a more fruitful discussion. As I was reading Moira's book, we've had one of these women living with us, and it's been really great timing to have a Muslim, woman living in the house as I read the book. And at different times I would say to her, hey, what do you think about, what Moira is saying here? And we had a discussion one day about her father and kind of male figures in the community. And as she presented a very glowing kind of picture of her dad and his place in the community and the wider community, I was aware of myself inwardly thinking, nah, that's not true. You know, that's not what happens in Muslim communities. And I had to pull myself up short, saying, Catherine, this woman was born, you know, and lived 40 years of her life. She actually is telling you about her experience. And there's no point putting your assumption of what it's like for her and then trying to share on that basis. You actually need to listen to what she's saying. So I have a way to go applying the approaches that are in this book. And I think I also want to share Kathy's thing. I don't think this is just a book for people wanting to relate to Muslim women. I think it's actually a good book for Christians who want to relate to anybody. Moira finished the book reflecting on the story of Hagar in the Old Testament. And I realised I often think of the story of Hagar as kind of, oh, that's the subplot. You know, the important story is Abraham and Sarah and Isaac. And as I read it again, I thought, yeah, what a moving story this is. And it's about a woman who has been used and abused and rejected and thrown out. And as she goes through extraordinary pain and suffering, she cries out to God. And then she comes to say, this is the God who sees, and I have seen him. What more could we want for our relationships with Muslim women, and for all people in fact, that in our interactions with them, as we observe, as we listen, as we actually really understand them and respond to them from that perspective, that they say, this is the God who sees us, and I have seen him. Thank you, Moira. We're really indebted to your labour of love. And so it's my joy and privilege with Bernie and you here that we launch this book today. And we just want to give you thanks.
I feel like I need a minute after that. Anyone else? The next person I'd like to invite up, you might also know in many capacities. You may know her if you live on site as someone who works on staff. You may know her as someone who has cooked wonderful food, who has held everything together and told people where to go and what to do. You may know her as a friend, as a travel buddy, and as creative in many ways. She's also, amongst all those things, she's a wonderful illustrator. So as you can see, we've got some of her prints around the wall and over here as well, and they will be for sale. We've also got a coloured in one here that was a gift for Mum. And when Jackie sent me this, or showed me a picture of this print, because I'd commissioned it for Mum, she said, Hagar is wearing the desert. And I thought, oh, you get it. Jackie has both lived experience in the Middle East and alongside Muslim women, and a commitment and a devotion to excellence and to detail. So you'll see on the cover of the book, but also at the start of each chapter, there is a picture, and they're a little small, but there's so much detail going on in there. And buy the big print so you can get the full detail as well. So I just want to invite up Jackie, and also just please applaud her and thank her with me for her work on this.
Hello, I'm Jackie, and yes, I have green hair. It's new. My sister is a hairdresser. So if you would like to also have beautiful colours put in your hair, let me know. I had the honour of illustrating this book for Isabel, and I knew her through working here, and it's been a privilege to get to know her and to share our experiences of the Middle East together. And I know my mother would have loved to be here too, but she is in Egypt at the moment, and she has no plans on coming back anytime soon, because that's where her heart is. I've never done a project like this before, and it's a new thing to be called an artist, but I have really enjoyed working on this, and I think I just have to give in to being called an artist because I resisted. It was a wonderful opportunity to explore my Egyptian heritage. My parents are both from Egypt. Although this is from a very Islamic point of view, which is a bit different from my Coptic Orthodox upbringing. But Egypt is mostly Muslim and you can't avoid them, and there's just so much richness where Coptic Orthodox and Islam just come together, and you have a Middle Eastern culture where Christianity and Islam live side by side, and people work together, they understand each other and they love each other, no matter where their faith lies. And the illustrations in part do represent some Egyptian parts of my life, you know, my grandmother at the spice stall, my mother brewing the Turkish coffee in the Kanaka. You know, I'm enjoying this beautifully carved cup of tea. And it is a culture that's bold and flowy and full of intricate patterns. And I've endeavoured to capture that while creating these illustrations to really represent the faith, the culture and the daily life of Islamic women in the Middle East and beyond. And I think Moira's done a wonderful job in writing a book that helps you connect and understand the lives of Islamic women. The joyful hospitality, the celebrations that are big and loud and colourful, which is what you can see here, but also the isolations, the hardships of these women, and I think the importance of how faith shapes their lives. You know, they're striving to live a life obedient to God. And it is Hagar's heritage to know God, to look up at him, and to throw yourself at his mercy. You know, that's what women in the Middle East, you know, they grow up knowing God, whether they're Christian or Muslim, and to depend on him, to put themselves at his mercy, their children, their families. And as Miriam said, I coloured this in. She is dressed in the colour of the desert. I love it. It's a unique one of a kind. So please enjoy the artwork, and if you'd like a copy to enjoy, it is available, and there are some bookmarks too. Thanks.
Thanks, Jacqueline. Jackie showed me all around Egypt when we got to travel back there together, and just before the pandemic, when these things were still possible. I haven't got all of Moira's experience, but I've had the privilege and the joy of getting to know a few Muslim women over the years. And just the joy of learning the nuance and the diversity of what it is to be a Muslim woman and what that looks like to so many different people. I had a friend who had fled Aleppo with her husband and was now living in Istanbul in a tiny little one-room apartment, and working to make ends meet, and had a little son there. And I went to visit her one day, and she said, well, none of my extended family are here, and my son was sick, and I didn't know what to do, and I almost called you to go with me to the hospital because she would need an interpreter, or a foreign face might help. And she said, I also put these little charms, these amulets on, and I wouldn't normally use them, but when I'm far from home and my son is sick, I'll use anything. And there's so much going on in that experience, and thankfully her son pulled through, and he was okay, and now she has 2 sons. And then I also met in Ankara, in a different city, a woman who had grown up in Australia and had attended a private Muslim school, I think probably not too far away from where we live now, had moved to Ankara to study Muslim theology. And because I was studying Christian theology, I got to do some exchange programs and attend some classes with her. And I went out and had a coffee or a drink with her. And she was a good academic debater, theological debater. It's such just a joyfully humbling experience to have someone run circles around you with their arguments. Like, oh, I got to learn how to do this better. And it's such a good learning experience. So this poem that I wrote about one of those experiences is called Sister Searcher. And it goes like this. Sister Searcher, we square up to each other over baklava and orange juice. Our words testing the water, waiting for the first mention of Muhammad or Messiah and what we think of them. The debate itself takes place between two sets of firm but sunny smiles, eyes wary, brows furrowed in frustration at the other's refusal to concede or confusion over a particular argument. There is no force, only words, but the words themselves tussle between us back and forth like two bull ants wrestling on the table. And this, then, is what the debate would live and die as, if I forget to bring love to the table. Because logic is vital, understanding is important, but I can never talk you into a different belief. I'm still learning how to respect your mind and match your fight while resting in his love and light. The topic changes abruptly over a phone interruption, and neither of us attempts to move it back. We'd like to be friends, I think. So tell me, friend, can what we share guide our wandering through our differences? Thank you. I'd now like to invite up the star of the show, Moira Dale, Dr. Moira Dale, who will share with us a bit about the book. Thank you.
Thanks, friends, to you all for coming and your encouragement in being here. My neighbours had invited me, as I sometimes did, to go with them to a wedding, so I'd put on my best clothes and then got the all-covering overcoat and headscarf that you wore out on the street, and off we went. And when we got to the wedding hall, we were met with a tiny cup of the strong, bitter Arabic coffee that's used for celebrations or festivals or funerals. And then we took our coats and our scarves off and went into the main hall, and it was full of women, only women. And they were gorgeously dressed, colours of every kind, beautiful garments, plunging necklines, hemlines from the floor to the high hip, and everything in between. Beautiful hairdos, sculptures, more sequins, waves and curls. And they danced. Without any men present, the dancing was sensuous and uninhibited. They shimmied, they undulated, they curved in front of me in what was a total pelvic celebration of being a woman. And the older women sat around and chatted or kept an eye on the dancers to see if there were any possible brides for their sons or their nephews. And the bride sat there on a nice chair watching it all. There were refreshments. And round about midnight, word came that the groom and his party were coming. And everyone grabbed their coats and their scarves. And in 5 minutes I couldn't recognise any of the gorgeous creatures who'd been shimmying and undulating in front of me for the past several hours. And then we headed off home, and the groom's party went off in a cavalcade of tooting horns to take the wedding party to the flat where they were going to live. My Muslim friends have taught me so much, different ways of cooking, of doing life, of dancing, of celebrating being a woman. So why this book? I think you've already heard a lot about why. I was reading a book quite recently on Islam, and it was a good book and it was well written, but I was puzzled as I read it. I thought, why aren't I recognising any of these interactions? I've had more than 20 years in the Middle East. I've interacted with Muslims around the world. Surely I should have some parallels. And then I looked at the author's name, and it was a man, and I realised every time he said Muslim, he meant Muslim men. So what's different about Muslim women? Well, while there are some brilliant Muslim women, theologians and scholars around, and I've learnt so much from them. We find overwhelmingly with Muslim women around the world, and perhaps not just Muslim women, that they tend not to operate out of a category called theology from which they have religious discussions. Rather, for Muslim women and many other women, religion is integral to daily life and its duties. Faith finds its place in and around as part of how women function in home and workplace, in families and communities. We see that Muslim women do life and faith theology together. Daily duties, family responsibilities, interact with faith duties and shape what's possible. Religious requirements find their place in and around looking after children, caring for sick family members, helping at times of community bereavement or celebration or other crises, maintaining family networks and relationships. Physical body rhythms affect what's possible in prayer or fasting or reading the Quran. And so I started asking what might happen if we started there. We began exploring these daily issues of life and family and community responsibilities and cultural requirements for Muslim women and how they interact with faith. It's great to have Bernie with Catherine here, and also Dennis Savaliev representing Melbourne School of Theology and the Centre for the Study of Islam, because in a sense that's bookended this journey. Over a decade ago, they asked me to teach a course on feminism in Islam, where I got to explore a few of these issues. And then quite recently to give the annual Arthur Jeffries lecture, where I could explore some of the themes of this book. And soon after teaching that first course at MST, the Zuwayma Centre at Columbia International University in South Carolina asked me to come and teach a course on women and Islam. And as we discussed it, they asked me what the main textbook was, and it was then that I realised I still had to write it. So that was kind of the beginning of it. And having cancer has given me time when I've had to put down a lot of other responsibilities, so I could actually come back and put more time into pulling this together. And a few years ago, Kathy and Hein and I started a network among women working with Muslims around the world when women speak. And that's been a most wonderful partnership. And over the years, the courses we've run online with women right around the world, the blogs and the webzine articles have been a place to discuss and develop many of the ideas in this book as we explored what the issues looked like for women in different parts of the world. And teaching classes here at St Andrew's Hall have also been a place to develop the ideas further. So in the book, I've tried to acknowledge all those who've contributed to it, and many of you are here today. I want to thank now especially all those who've helped in preparing and set up for today. A shout out in particular for Miriam and Tariq Dale. They constituted themselves the publicity team for the book, and I've learned so much from them. And thanks to Miriam for being the event organiser, and Tariq for, after some pretty late nights, hitting the road really early and getting back from Canberra yesterday so he could be here today. Yeah. Thanks to Bernie and Catherine Power for generously taking time out of your busy schedules and being able to launch this book from your own rich experience. I really appreciate it. From Jackie, you've heard from her. I've appreciated the sensitivity and the cultural insight which she brought to illustrating the book. I want to thank Debbie and Letitia and Harley for doing the book pickups and book sales, Akhil for coming to play music, and then a friend from the Middle East has recorded some songs specially for today, and you'll see them playing in the book room. I really commend you going and listening to her. For the St Andrew's Hall team, for letting us hold this event today and all their supportiveness, to Andrew Gifford and the rest of CMS Vic for all their help, to all of you who've sacrificially contributed towards today and volunteered to help in so many ways. My thanks to Lauren, who supports me daily and is untiring even as that support becomes a little bit more onerous. And our thanks to God, who calls us all to know and serve and love him daily more deeply through Jesus Messiah. My thanks to you all.
just one more thank you to you, and from all of us, thank you, Jill, for picking these flowers up, and from all of us here for everything that you do in investing in us and this word. Thank you, Mum. We have almost reached the end of the formal part of our gathering, but now comes another fun part, the buying the books and the art and listening to beautiful music. One of Mum's dear friends, as she mentioned, who worked cross-culturally in the Middle East, did a cover of some Arabic songs for this event. So she's singing in her second language, which is already very impressive. She includes amongst them a cover of Fayrouz, who has been the voice of the Levant for nearly 70 years. If you want to get a taste of her music, just find her on YouTube, she's amazing. And the second song is a cover of a pop song, which is a tribute to mothers. There's a chapter in this book on the importance of mothers in Muslim culture, and this song reflects that and was chosen to appreciate the maternal role that Moira has played, well, specifically to Tarek and I, but also in mentoring so many cross-cultural workers. And you can see this performance on the screen in the sales room, just there. From here, we'll do a few things. Firstly, we'll go and listen to the music and buy or pick up your books and your artwork. Next, head straight out onto the deck where you can enjoy some refreshments and remove your mask. So please keep them on until you get out there. And if possible, wherever possible, please remember to socially distance as much as possible as well. The cups and the plates that you will find out there are compostable, so there are compost bins around. Everything else is rubbish and can go in the appropriate bins, but keep an eye out for those. And perhaps in about 30 minutes or so we'll start packing up the space, some of these chairs, and you're invited to come and help if you would like. Please remember as well that Moira has limited energy at this time and will not be able to greet everyone, but we're so thrilled to have you all here. So thank you for coming with me to launch Islam and Women, Hagar's Heritage today. Thanks for coming.